Elizabeth Holmes, the former billionaire entrepreneur, reports to prison. Here's what life is like at the federal prison camp in Bryan, Texas. Hi there, everyone. I'm Jeff, and this is Plain English, where we help you upgrade your English with current events and trending topics. You're learning English, and this is what I like to say. You should also learn about the English-speaking world. And hopefully, this is a part of the world that you'll never experience. But today, we'll talk about what it's going to be like for Elizabeth Holmes. She reported to prison on May 30th, and she'll spend at least the first part of her sentence at a minimum security federal prison. In the second half of today's lesson, I'll show you how to use the English expression serve time, and we have a quote of the week. This is lesson 582 of Plain English, so you can find the transcript and full lesson resources at plainenglish.com/582. Let's get going. The federal prison camp in Bryan, Texas is a minimum security prison. From the outside, it doesn't look like a prison with guard towers and lots of barbed wire. The lawn is well manicured. There are mature trees and elegant signs. There's fencing and some barbed wire, but not a lot. It's 95 miles from Houston, Texas. The prison holds about 600 nonviolent female offenders who have been convicted of federal crimes. In the U.S., violent crimes and property crimes are typically state crimes. You go to a state court, and if convicted, you serve in a state prison. Federal crimes are all about national issues, things like drug trafficking, money laundering, terrorism, financial crimes, and fraud. Jen Shah, who starred on The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, is incarcerated at the federal prison camp in Bryan. She is serving a sentence for telemarketing fraud. One of the rich parents convicted in the university admissions scandal served time there too. And on May 30th, the prison camp got its newest inmate, Elizabeth Holmes. You heard about her in lesson 446. She was a billionaire at age 30, the richest self-made woman according to some estimates. She was on the cover of Forbes and Fortune magazines. She appeared on stage with Bill Clinton at a conference. A former Secretary of State was on the board of directors of her company. Theranos, her company, promised accurate blood tests from just a single small drop of blood. If it had been true, it would have been revolutionary. But it was all a fraud. Her blood tests didn't work. She was convicted of criminal fraud and sentenced to 11 years in prison. Holmes is appealing her conviction, but it looks likely that she'll spend the next decade in the federal prison in Bryan, Texas. So what is life like there? Inmates live in dormitory-style rooms. They sleep 4 to a room. There are no doors to the rooms, so there's little privacy. There are 2 sets of bunk beds, each with a thin mattress. Each room has a table and 4 folding chairs. The chairs must be folded up against the wall when they're not being used. Inmates are allowed to have only limited personal possessions, whatever can fit under their beds, in their lockers, or on a small table. Inmates must wear government-issued clothing for the whole time they are incarcerated. The clothes they wear when they arrive are mailed back to their families. They get standard issue sheets, blankets, pillows, and towels. The prison provides basics like soap and toothpaste, but if inmates want brand name toiletries, they have to buy them from the commissary. The commissary is the prison store. There, inmates can buy toiletries, food, coffee, cosmetics, office supplies, and other similar items. Inmates are not allowed to handle cash, but they have an electronic account with the prison. Relatives can deposit small amounts of money into the inmate's account, but inmates can't spend more than $360 per month. Inmates also make money from working, 12 cents per hour, up to about 40 cents per hour. All inmates are assigned work duties. Every new inmate does a rotation in food service, which is considered the hardest job. That shift starts at 4:30 a.m. After a minimum of 90 days working in food service, inmates may be transferred to other job assignments. Inmates work in the laundry, barber shop, library, and chapel. Others are teachers, landscapers, janitors, or clerks in the commissary. The most coveted jobs are in the factories. The U.S. prison system runs its own factories on inmate labor. There, an inmate can make up to $1.15 per hour. When not working, inmates can take classes, attend religious services, exercise, read books from the library, watch TV, do legal research, and receive visitors. There are strict visiting hours, weekends, and holidays only. There's a video system that allows inmates to have a 25-minute video visit for $6 per visit. Inmates don't have access to the internet. However, they have a limited email system that allows them to send text-only electronic messages to approved contacts. Phone calls are limited to 15 minutes and are monitored by staff. Inmates have some general freedom of movement in the facility when they are not working and when they are not required to be in their rooms. However, life is highly regimented. There are 2 official counts in which inmates must be standing by their beds each day at 4:05 p.m. and at 10 p.m. There's a general wake-up call at 6 o'clock a.m. every day. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner are at standard times: 6:30 a.m., 10:30 a.m., and 4:30 p.m. Lights go out at 10:30 p.m. or 11:30 p.m. on weekends and holidays. Compared to a maximum security prison, this is a relatively relaxed way to serve a sentence. Some people look at the daily regimen and call it camp fed, like it's a summer camp. The people who say that have probably never been to a federal prison nor given it much serious thought. There may not be the solid cell doors, solitary confinement, and violence of a maximum security prison, but this is still prison. Elizabeth Holmes has very few rights. She'll make less than $1 an hour for her labor. She has no access to the internet, little access to information, and she will see her very young children only during prison visits on weekends or via blurry video calls. Theranos promised to revolutionize blood testing. To get complicated blood tests today, you have to get blood drawn at a hospital or a doctor's office. But Theranos said with a small finger prick, you could get extensive lab results done. Actually, no, none of the tests worked. Minor detail, but they didn't give accurate results. Along the way, Theranos fooled investors, pharmacy chains, customers, celebrities, and most of the business media. A reporter for the Wall Street Journal, a business newspaper, began to investigate Theranos after being contacted by a whistleblower. The articles in the newspaper led to Theranos' downfall. The journalist wrote a book called Bad Blood about the fall of Theranos. You can get a copy of Bad Blood at bookstores, on Amazon, at your public library, or depending on where you currently reside, you might even be able to borrow a copy from the prison library at the federal prison camp in Bryan, Texas. Yes, the book about Elizabeth Holmes's company is available at the library in the prison where she will be serving her sentence. Today's expression is to serve time. I scanned the lesson text, as I always do, looking for good expressions. And there were a few good ideas in there. But then I thought, when would I ever say the word serve time again? To serve time is to spend time in prison after being convicted of a crime. In Lesson 205, we talked about the difference between jail and prison. Jail is where they take you when you've been arrested. But after you have a trial and you get convicted and a judge sentences you to serve time, then you go to prison. If a judge sentences you to serve time, that means if a judge decides that you must spend time in prison. Sometimes a judge might sentence an individual to pay a fine, do community service, or be on probation. Other times, home confinement is the punishment. But prison time is often the punishment for more serious crimes. And if you go to prison, you serve time. Will she have to serve time? That's a question you might hear. After Elizabeth Holmes's conviction, it was pretty clear she would have to serve time. But it's not always clear. Martha Stewart is perhaps the most famous businesswoman ever to serve time in a federal prison. Martha taught us how to set an elegant dinner table, bake cookies, and decorate the house for Halloween. She was convicted of insider trading. That's profiting off buying and selling stock when you have information from inside the company, information that others would not have. Will she have to serve time? That was on everyone's minds. Not everyone convicted of insider trading serves time, but Martha did. She served 5 months in a federal prison camp in West Virginia. Did you hear that? You can say served plus a time period. Martha Stewart served 5 months. If I end the sentence there, Martha Stewart served 5 months, a native English speaker will know I'm talking about prison. If you say served time or served plus an amount of time, you're talking about prison unless you say otherwise. For example, you could say, Martha served 6 years as president of the Parents Association at her children's school. That's not talking about prison. But if you say, Martha served 5 months, period, end of sentence, then this means prison. Serve hard time is another variation. To serve hard time means to spend many years in prison or to serve time in a maximum security prison. Prison is bad, even where Elizabeth Holmes is going. But a maximum security prison is really bad. If a convict is sentenced to serve hard time, that person is not going to Camp Fed, a minimum security location. That person is going to a prison where life is considerably more difficult and probably for a long time. Here's a quote for today. It is the greatest of all mistakes to do nothing because you can only do little. This is by Sydney Smith, an English writer who lived in the late 1700s and early 1800s. It is the greatest of all mistakes to do nothing because you can only do little. And that brings us to the end of today's Plain English for Monday, June 19th, 2023. Right around this time of year is when school would end for me when I was growing up. In my town at that time, it was almost always the third week of June, the end of school for the year. They would schedule it to the end of maybe the first or the second week, but we'd have to go longer to make up for snow cancellations in the winter. So it would usually be right around this time, and I loved summer vacation as a kid. I loved being outside. The sun would stay up late. It was baseball season. I could go swimming. I could read books. I could sleep late. Those days of summer vacation are long gone. But this week, every year, I always think back to the pure happiness of walking out of school for the last time. Anyway, enough reminiscing. The next lesson is coming out on Thursday. It's going to be about a new health trend. Another health trend that I will most certainly not be participating in, but it's fun to learn about. That's on Thursday when lesson number 583 comes out. See you then.